Welcome back to the deep dive. We are so glad you're here with us today.
It's great to be back.
Whether you are, walking the dog, commuting, or maybe you're sitting at a desk just surrounded by highlighters and piles of notes, we are going to make this next hour count.
We certainly are.
Today, we are tackling a beast. And I say that with a lot of love for the industry, but we are looking at something that I think keeps a lot of people up at night.
Oh, for sure. It's a big one.
Specifically, if you're preparing for a high-stakes real estate exam, maybe that daunting third course, or maybe you're just trying to survive your first year in the commercial or multi-unit space without, getting sued, we are diving headfirst into the complexities of multi-unit and residential leasing.
It is. It is a dense topic. There's absolutely no getting around that.
None at all.
It's this unique intersection where hard legal reality crashes into form mechanics.
Yep.
And then just for fun, you have to do some fairly specific math on top of it.
Right.
It's not just one skill set. It's 3 or 4 wrapped into one transaction.
Right. Exactly. It's like 3 different languages you have to speak all at once. You have the Residential Tenancies Act, the RTA looming over everything like a storm cloud.
Absolutely.
You have the specific wording of the forms, which can be incredibly tricky, almost designed to trip you up if you aren't paying close attention.
They really can be.
And then you have the financial analysis. And honestly, looking at the stack of notes, articles, and all the source material we have for today, I think the common feeling for anyone stepping into this arena is just being overwhelmed. There are so many wording traps.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah.
Wording traps. The material isn't just asking, do you know the law in a broad sort of philosophical sense?
No.
It's asking, can you spot the difference between must and may? Can you distinguish between a rent deposit and a damage deposit when the clock is ticking? It's very precise and is very unforgiving.
A single word change in a clause can shift the liability from the seller to the buyer instantly.
Instantly, yeah.
So if you are listening to this and you're feeling that pressure, take a breath. Seriously, unclench your jaw. Our goal today isn't to read a textbook at you. No, that's the last thing you need right now. We want to take this source material, which is essentially a mastery guide for this specific real estate niche, and unpack it layer by layer. We want to turn those missed questions and that general confusion into a cohesive map.
Right, and map is the key word here. One of the most helpful things in the source material is this concept of a mental infographic.
I like that.
Instead of trying to memorize 1,000 isolated facts, which is, a recipe for disaster, we are going to stitch them together into a flow. We're going to look at the life cycle of a deal.
Okay.
From the moment a buyer looks at a multi-unit property, through the due diligence, the math, the offer, and then into the actual tenancy and closing.
I love that. Structure saves us. So just to give everyone a heads up on where we are going, we're going to follow that flow. We'll start with the multi-unit due diligence, what documents you actually need versus what you think you need. Then we'll get into the math of money, specifically cracking the code on effective gross income.
The dreaded EGI.
The dreaded EGI. Then we move to the offer wording, the RTA logic, and finally we'll hit a lightning round of form traps and specific terminology.
The mission is simple. Clarity. We want to clarify what buyers ask for, how the money actually works, and where those legal traps are hiding.
Right.
So when you see a question on an exam or face a real-life scenario with a client who is looking at you for answers, you don't panic. You just recognize the pattern.
You'll see it coming.
You'll say, oh, I know this. This is the NDA trap, or this is the vacancy calculation.
Okay, let's jump right into the first segment then. Multi-unit due diligence. This is the typical versus the trap. So imagine I'm a buyer. Let's paint the picture. I'm looking at a triplex or fourplex in a decent neighborhood. I'm interested. I'm enthusiastic. I walk in. I like the bricks and mortar. The roof looks good. But now I need to look under the hood.
Right. The real stuff.
What am I asking for? What is on that high-yield list of documents that I absolutely need to see before I even think about making an offer?
Well, if you are a diligent buyer, and we're assuming you are, or that you are representing one, you're asking for quite a bit. And the source material highlights a specific list that comes up time and again.
Okay.
It starts with the lifeblood of the investment,
Right.
the rent roll. But, and this is crucial, not just a total number. You don't want a piece of paper that says monthly income, $5,000. That's useless.
Right, because a lump sum doesn't tell you the story at all. It doesn't tell you if Unit 3 hasn't paid rent in 6 months.
Exactly.
Or if Unit 1 is paying like $200 because they've been there since 1990 and are protected by rent control.
Precisely. You need the granular unit-by-unit detail.
Yeah.
You need to see the breakdown, unit A, unit B, unit C. What is the current rent for each specific door? Are there arrears? That's a huge one. You are buying the revenue stream, so you need to know if that stream is actually flowing.
Yeah, is it a stream or a trickle?
Right. And what deposits are held? Is it just last month's rent, or is there a key deposit? Is parking included in the rent, or is it extra? Storage lockers. You need to know exactly what the tenant gets for their money and what the landlord is obligated to provide.
So step one is the rent roll, digging into the nitty-gritty details. But revenue is only half the story, right? If I'm making $10,000 a month but spending $11,000, I'm in big trouble.
Exactly. You need the other side of the ledger. You need income and expense statements.
Okay.
And typically you want to see a history. 12 to 36 months is pretty standard because you want to spot trends. 1 year can be an anomaly.
Ah, good point.
Maybe they had a really wild winter, so heating costs were low. Or maybe they deferred maintenance to make the net operating income look higher for the sale. You need a wider lens.
So you're looking for patterns.
You're looking for spikes in utility costs or maybe a sudden drop in repairs, which might just mean they stopped fixing things to make the numbers look better for you.
That's a really good point. If the maintenance budget drops to zero in the year before the sale, that's not efficiency. That's deferred maintenance that I'm going to have to pay for. I'm literally buying their neglect.
You're buying their problems. Exactly. And speaking of utilities, you need the actual bills. Heat, hydro, water.
The source document.
The source documents.
Yeah.
If the landlord pays them, you need to see them. Don't just take a spreadsheet at face value. Spreadsheets can be edited very easily.
Sure.
Utility bills from the city or the gas company, much harder to fake. You want to verify the consumption.
And then there are the service contracts. This feels like something people might forget about.
They do, until they get the first bill after closing. Service contracts are things like snow removal, landscaping, fire safety inspections, HVAC maintenance, maybe even a contract for coin-operated laundry machines.
Right.
If you buy the building, you are often stepping into these relationships. Are you inheriting a contract that costs $5,000 a year for snow removal?
Right.
And the market rate is $2,000? Yeah. Or maybe a contract that has a massive cancellation fee. You need to know that liability before you sign on the dotted line.
And of course, generally, you need the leases themselves. You need to see the actual contracts.
Yes. The lease is the contract that governs the relationship you are about to buy. You need to see all the terms.
Okay, so that sounds like a standard shopping list. Rent roll, expenses, bills, contracts, leases. But here is where it gets interesting and where the source material points out a massive, massive trap. I feel like a lot of people, and I might have been guilty of this in the past, assume that information should just be free-flowing. It's a sale, right? You want me to buy your building? Show me the goods.
Sure.
But then the topic of the NDA comes up, the non-disclosure agreement.
This is a classic exam trap and a real-world stumbling block. You will see a question asking, what is typical in this process? And people often instinctively rule out the NDA.
Yeah, I can see that.
They think, oh, come on, that's for big corporate mergers. Or like tech companies protecting trade secrets, not for selling a triplex on Main Street. But that is incorrect.
Why, though? Why is an NDA so common here? It feels, I don't know, overly formal for a small building.
Think about what you're asking for. You are asking for the personal financial details of the tenants. You're seeing who pays what, maybe even their names on the rent roll.
Okay.
And, on the flip side, you are asking for detailed income and expense reports of a private business, which is exactly what a rental property is. That is sensitive data.
Good point.
Sellers are not just going to hand that over to anyone who walks in off the street or clicks more info on a listing. Imagine if the tenants found out the building was for sale because some random buyer left a rent roll on a coffee shop table.
It would cause panic.
Total panic.
That's true. Tenants get very nervous when they hear the word sale. They immediately assume eviction.
Exactly. So requiring an NDA before releasing that detailed data is actually very typical. It protects the seller's business intelligence, and it protects the tenant's privacy. It's a barrier to entry that filters out the tire kickers from the serious buyers.
That makes total sense when you frame it that way. It's about privacy and proprietary business information. Now, there's another nuance here regarding how these documents are delivered.
Yes.
I think there's a misconception that you shake hands, sign the NDA, and then boom, you get a box with every original lease immediately.
It really works that way. It's more of a staged reveal. The source material explains that usually you start with the rent roll and what we call lease abstracts or summaries.
So just the highlights first.
You get the data about the leases first. You verify the economics. Does the building make money? Okay, good. The actual physical copies of the leases, especially unredacted ones with personal information, often don't come until later.
Later meaning after an offer is signed.
Usually after a conditional offer is in place, or if they are provided earlier, they are heavily redacted. Blacked out names, contact info to protect tenant identity until the buyer is legally committed to the deal.
I see.
The key takeaway for you listening is this. The exam, or the real-world test, is about what is normal to request, not necessarily what is handed over the second you say hello.
That is a crucial distinction.
You request the leases, yes. But don't be surprised, and don't mark it wrong on a test if the delivery is conditional on an accepted offer.
It's a process, not an event. It's a dance. You don't get the full picture until you've proven you're a serious partner.
Exactly. You have to show you're serious.
Okay, so we've got our documents, we've signed our NDA, we've seen the rent roll. Now we have to look at the numbers. And this is where the sweat starts to bead on the forehead for a lot of us who went into real estate to avoid advanced calculus. We have to talk about the math of money, specifically the effective gross income, or EGI.
The EGI code. This is the one formula that, according to our source, they will just keep punching you with.
And why is that?
The reason isn't because the math is hard, it's actually just arithmetic, but because people try to take shortcuts. They try to do it in their head.
I am definitely a mental math shortcut kind of person. Oh, it's roughly this. Just knock off 5%. Guilty as charged.
And that is exactly how you get the question wrong. The source material is very strict on the order of operations here. You cannot just fudge the numbers. You have to follow the steps in the specific order, or the percentages will skew the result.
Okay, walk us through. Let's use the example from the notes so we can visualize it. Listeners, if you can, visualize these numbers or just jot them down. We have a monthly gross income of $12,300.
Oh.
And we have a vacancy and credit loss rate of 5%. What do we do?
Step 1, annualize. You must convert that monthly number to an annual number before you do anything else. This is where people trip up.
Oh.
They try to apply the 5% to the monthly number and then multiply by 12 later. Don't do that. It creates rounding errors and logic gaps. Annualize first. So you take the $12,300 and multiply by 12.
Okay, doing the math. 12,300 times 12 is $147,600. That gives us our GPI gross potential income.
Correct. That is the perfect world number. That is the potential money if the building was 100% full, 365 days a year, and everyone paid every cent perfectly on time.
Which never happens.
Which never happens. But we know reality isn't perfect.
Yeah.
That's where the vacancy rate comes in. Step 2, calculate the vacancy and credit loss. You take that annual figure, the $147,600, and multiply it by your rate, which is 5% or 0.05.
Okay, so 5% of $147,600, that implies a loss of $7,380.
Exactly. Now, step 3, the subtraction. You take your gross potential income, the $147,600, and you subtract that vacancy allowance, the $7,380.
And that leaves you with $140,220.
That final number is your effective gross income, your EGI.
So EGI equals GPI minus vacancy. Simple enough?
Yes. And there is a great memory hook in the source material for this, which really helps lock it in.
What is it?
Vacancy is the tax reality charges you for optimism.
Oh, I love that. The tax reality charges you for optimism because if you just bank on the gross potential income, you are being overly optimistic. You are ignoring the reality of turnover, eviction delays, and non-payment.
Precisely. You have to pay that tax to get to the real number, the effective number.
It's so true.
And in a test environment or even in a pitch to a client, if you skip the annualization step or if you apply the percentage to the monthly number and forget to scale it back up properly, you will arrive at the wrong answer.
And the wrong answers are there waiting for you.
Oh yeah, the distractors? The wrong multiple choice options are usually calculated using those exact common mistakes. They know how you're going to mess it up, and they put that wrong answer right there waiting for you as option B.
That is diabolical. So they calculate the wrong answer based on the common error and put it as an option.
Every single time. They're testing your process, not just your ability to punch buttons on a calculator.
So no shortcuts. Annualize, calculate percentage, subtract.
Got it. Okay, let's move from the math to the legal side. This is where things get a little spicy and honestly a little dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. We are talking about offers on tenanted properties.
This is a huge area. It's probably the biggest source of liability in residential transactions involving investments.
Let's set the scene. I am selling a 3-unit property. It's fully tenanted. I find a buyer. The buyer is excited. I, the seller, just want to be done with it. I want to move to Florida and play golf.
The buyer asks me, hey, I want to renovate these units, or maybe I just want fresh tenants at market rates because these rents are low. Can you just tell the current tenants to leave? Can I, the seller, or can the new owner just tell the tenants, hey, good news, bad news, the building's sold, you need to leave?
Absolutely not. And this is the naive question that the source material warns about. The Residential Tenancies Act, the RTA is always in the room.
Always in the room.
Think of the RTA as an invisible party to the transaction. You might not see them at the closing table, but they have veto power over almost everything regarding the people living there.
So a sale does not terminate a tenancy?
No, never. The tenancy runs with the land. That is the fundamental concept you have to burn into your brain.
Runs with the land.
The buyer steps into the shoes of the seller. If the seller had a lease with a tenant, the buyer now has that exact same lease with that tenant. The tenants stay. Their leases stay. Their rights stay.
Okay.
The trap is thinking that ownership change equals a reset button. It does not. It is simply a change of landlord.
Okay, so if the buyer can't just kick everyone out, that creates significant risk for the buyer. What if the tenants aren't paying? What if the seller says they are paying $2,000, but they're actually paying $1,000? What if the rents are illegal?
Yes.
How does a buyer protect themselves if they can't control the RTA?
You can't control the RTA, so you must control the offer language. This is where seller representations and warranties become your shield. You need to construct a legal fence around your liability.
Talk to me about those. What specifically should be in there? What are we looking for?
You need the seller to go on the record legally. You want a clause that says, effectively, the seller represents that the attached rent roll is accurate. That's step one.
Got it.
Then the seller represents that the rents are lawful. That is a big one lawful rent.
Define that for us. Why the distinction between current rent and lawful rent?
Just because a tenant is paying $2,000 doesn't mean that is the legal rent. Maybe the landlord illegally raised it 3 years ago.
Right.
Maybe they ignored the rent control cap. If the Landlord and Tenant Board, the LTB, finds out it should be $1,500, the new buyer is on the hook for that difference. The tenant could apply for a rebate, and the new owner, you would have to pay back the overcharged rent, potentially going back years.
Ouch! So you're buying a debt you didn't even know existed. You're buying the previous owner's mistake.
Exactly. So you need the seller to warranty that the rents are legal. If it turns out they lied, you can sue them for breach of warranty. Without that clause, you bought the problem, and you have very little recourse.
What else goes in that protective clause? What other promises do I want from the seller?
You want representations that there are no undisclosed arrears. You don't want to find out on closing day that Unit 2 hasn't paid in 6 months.
Right.
You want to confirm that the leases provided are true copies. And crucially, that there are no outstanding landlord and tenant board matters. You don't want to buy a building only to find out there is an active hearing for an eviction that has been dragging on for months, or a maintenance dispute where the tenant is suing for an abatement.
So the plain English version of this clause would be something like, seller promises that the rent list is real, nobody is late on rent, the prices are legal, and we aren't currently fighting with the tenants in court.
That's a perfect summary.
Yeah.
Exactly. That covers the bases.
Yeah.
And the source material gives a great safe example of how this looks formally. Seller represents that the attached rent roll are accurate, and there are no outstanding notices. If you see that kind of language in a multiple choice question or a draft offer, that is the correct way to handle the risk. You are shifting the liability back to the seller if they are lying.
Okay, so we have protected the buyer inside the offer, but we need to zoom out a bit. There is a section in our source material about regulatory requirements.
Yes.
And it addresses a wrong mindset, the mindset that says, I'm a real estate agent, I just sell the bricks. I don't need to worry about the RTA or zoning or fire codes. That's for lawyers and inspectors.
And the expert response to that is exactly backward. You cannot sell the bricks effectively if you don't understand the rules that govern the bricks.
Right.
If you sell a triplex that is legally zoned as a duplex, you have committed a massive error. You have misrepresented the property.
The source outlines 3 pillars of regulation we need to be aware of. What are they?
Zoning, fire and life safety, and the RTA.
Okay, let's break them down. Start with zoning. This seems straightforward, but I bet there are traps.
Oh, there are. Zoning determines the legal use. Is this building actually allowed to be a triplex? Just because it has 3 kitchens and 3 mailboxes doesn't mean it's a legal triplex.
It could be an illegal conversion.
It might be a single-family home that someone illegally converted into 3 units without a permit. Zoning determines the number of permitted units and things like licensing. If the city finds out it's an illegal conversion, they can shut it down.
Right. And then you're stuck with a building you can't rent that you paid a triplex price for.
Exactly.
What about fire and life safety?
This is critical. Is it safe to occupy? This is about the fire code. Are there proper exits? If there's a fire in the basement, can the person on the 3rd floor get out safely? Are the smoke alarms interlinked? Is there proper fire separation drywall, fire doors between the units? If you sell a place that is a fire trap, the liability is enormous. You often hear terms like retrofit status.
Right.
A retrofitted unit implies it has been brought up to fire code. An illegal unit often fails here.
And the 3rd pillar is the RTA, which we touched on.
Yes, the tenancy continuity.
Yeah.
So the evaluation framework the source suggests is really simple and powerful. When you look at the multi-unit, ask 3 questions to yourself.
Okay.
Number 1, is it legal to exist? That's zoning. 2, is it safe to occupy? That's fire code. And 3, is it hard to remove tenants? That's the RTA.
I like that. Legal to exist, safe to occupy, hard to remove tenants. It's a great mental checklist to keep in your head so you don't get lost in the details.
It simplifies the complexity. If you can answer those 3 questions, you have a pretty good handle on the property.
Moving on to the mechanics of the deal itself. We are in the negotiation phase. We have offers flying back and forth. The source material highlights a specific trap regarding counteroffers.
This is a foreign mechanics trap that catches a lot of people. Let's say a buyer submits an offer for $500,000.
Okay.
The seller looks at it, crosses out the price, writes in $550,000, and maybe crosses out a condition, let's say the vacant possession condition. Then they sign it and send it back. What is that document now?
In my head, it's just the negotiation continuing. It's the same offer, just updated. We're still talking about the same deal.
Psychologically, yes, but legally.
No.
It's a new offer.
A completely new offer.
Completely new. The original offer from the buyer is dead. It has been extinguished. You cannot revive it. The counteroffer is effectively a brand new proposal from the seller to the buyer.
So how does the buyer accept it? This seems to be a point of confusion.
It is. The exam in the law looks for specific actions. To accept a counteroffer, the accepting party must do 2 things. Initial the changes and sign the acceptance.
Wait, what about the confirmation of acceptance paper? I see that all the time. Is that not the important part?
It exists, and it's important for establishing the timeline. When did the clocks start ticking? But the binding act, the thing that makes the contract real, is the initialing of the amendments and the signing of the acceptance block.
I see.
The confirmation of acceptance is just confirming that the acceptance was communicated. The source material warns not to get hung up on the confirmation document when the question is asking about the mechanics of acceptance itself. The core rule is initial plus sign.
Initial plus sign. Got it. So if I just sign the bottom but don't initial the price change that the seller made, have I accepted it?
Technically, no. You haven't acknowledged the change. It opens the door for a dispute. You must initial the change to show you agree to the new terms. If you miss that initial, the deal is on shaky ground.
Okay, let's pivot back to the tenants for a second. We talked about how the RTA is always in the room, but there's a specific area of leasing law that confuses people. The end of the lease.
The continuation rule.
Yeah. I think the average person assumes, I signed a 1-year lease, the year is over, the lease is done, I have to leave or sign a new one. That's how car leases work. That's how commercial leases often work.
And that is the general rule misconception in residential leasing. In Ontario, under the RTA, when a fixed-term lease ends, the tenant does not have to vacate.
They don't.
They do not have to sign a new lease. The tenancy automatically converts to a month-to-month or periodic tenancy. Same terms, same conditions, just no longer a fixed end date.
So the landlord can't just say, your year is up, I'm not renewing you, get out.
Correct. They cannot. They cannot even force the tenant to sign a new year-long lease.
Yeah.
The tenant has the right to go month-to-month automatically. It is a security of tenure provision.
But there is an exception, and this is the purchaser occupancy exception. This is very relevant for our listeners dealing with sales. When can a buyer get a tenant out?
This is a narrow lane, but it's an important one. If the building has no more than 3 units, so we're talking a house, a duplex, or a triplex, not a high-rise apartment building.
Okay. Small buildings only.
And the purchaser, or their immediate family, like a parent, spouse, or child, intends to live in one of the units for at least a year, notice can be given to terminate the tenancy.
Okay, so I'm buying it and I want to live there. That's the trigger.
Yes. But, and this is a big but, the sale alone doesn't do it. You can't just waive the sales contract at the tenant.
Right.
You have to serve the proper RTA notice, like an N12 form, with the proper notice period, which is usually 60 days ending on a rent payment period.
And compensation.
And often you have to pay compensation, like 1 month's rent. Yes.
Right. So the phrasing to look for on the exam is something like, tenancy continues unless ended according to RTA notice requirements.
Exactly. That is the safe phrasing. It acknowledges the general rule, which is continuation, and the specific exception, which is lawful notice. It avoids the trap of saying the tenancy ends on closing day, which is almost always false.
Why is that?
Because the closing day is irrelevant to the tenant's lease, unless the proper notice was served months in advance and just happens to line up.
Okay, let's look at another tenant scenario. Assignment versus sublet. These words get used interchangeably in casual conversation. Oh, I'm subletting my place to a friend. But they mean very different things legally.
Very different. And the source material focuses on assignment as a key trap.
So the scenario is, a tenant has 11 months left on a lease. They want to leave. They have a friend who wants the apartment. They want to just hand the keys to the friend and say, it's yours, pay the landlord.
That is an assignment. They are assigning their entire remaining interest in the lease to someone else. It's a handoff. The original tenant is washing their hands of the unit.
Can they just do that, just decide on their own?
No. The rule is assignment requires landlord consent.
The landlord has to say yes.
The landlord has to be asked. They can say yes or they can say no. Now, if they say no unreasonably or they refuse to even consider it, the tenant has other remedies, like ending the lease early.
Right.
But the tenant cannot just bypass the landlord.
The trap is thinking, oh, I'll just pay a fee and switch the name.
Right. Or thinking, it's my apartment, I can give it to whomever I want. You cannot. The landlord has the right to approve who lives in their property.
Mm-hmm.
The memory hook provided is simple. Assignment equals approval required.
Assignment equals approval required. I like that. Short, punchy, easy to remember.
And just to clarify the difference for the listener, a sublet is when the tenant leaves for a while but plans to come back.
Yeah.
Maybe they are going on a 3-month internship in another city. They are still the tenant. They are just subcontracting the space for a bit. They're still liable. An assignment is a permanent departure. The tenant is leaving and never coming back.
Got it.
The rules are slightly different, but for this specific handoff scenario, the key is knowing you need the landlord's nod.
Okay, we are moving through our map nicely. We've done the multi-unit stuff, the money, the general leasing rules. Now let's look at a specific beast. Condos. Condo leasing.
A world within a world, for sure.
The hierarchy here is confusing. You have the tenant, you have the landlord, who is the owner of the unit, and then you have the condo corporation, who is the boss.
It is a triangle of authority. The question, who is the boss, has a nuanced answer. The landlord, the owner, is the boss of the tenant. The lease is between them.
Mm-hmm.
The condo corporation is the boss of the building rules and the common elements.
So if the tenant is playing loud music at 3 a.m., who deals with that?
The condo corporation will likely contact the landlord and say, your tenant is violating the rules. Fix it. The condo corp can contact the tenant regarding compliance, but the primary legal pressure usually flows through the owner.
So the owner is on the hook.
The owner is responsible for the behavior of their tenant. If the tenant damages the elevator, the condo corp bills the owner, and the owner has to chase the tenant for the money.
Okay. What about voting? There is a condo meeting. They are voting on, I don't know, painting the hallway pink or replacing the windows. Yeah. Does the tenant get a vote? They live there. They have to look at the pink walls.
They do live there, but they do not own shares in the corporation. So the rule is strict. Owners vote. Tenants do not.
Ever.
Never. It doesn't matter if the tenant has lived there for 20 years. They have no say in the governance of the corporation.
Simple enough. What about attending the meeting? Can the owner just skip it?
This is a wording trap. You'll see questions asking if an owner must attend the meeting. The answer is usually no. Owners are not required to attend.
But if they want their vote to count, they can't just not show up.
They can appoint a proxy.
Mm-hmm.
And the source material highlights that a property manager can be that proxy, or a neighbor, or anyone, really. So the right answer is often can appoint proxy, and the wrong answer is must attend.
I see. It's about flexibility. You don't have to be physically in the room, but your power can be in the room via a proxy.
Exactly. Your vote can be there even if you aren't.
Okay, we have arrived at the final segment of our map. The source material calls this the lightning round of form traps and terminology.
My favorite part.
These are those little specific things that trip you up, even if you understand the big concepts.
The vocabulary tests, the gotcha questions.
Let's start with the classic mix-up. Lessor versus lessee. I admit I have to pause every time I see these. It feels like 18th century English. Why can't we just say landlord and tenant?
Because the law loves Latin roots.
Yeah.
You are not alone. They sound the same. But the memory hook here is brilliant. Are you ready?
I am.
Lessor. Lessors, lessee, lives.
Oh, okay, that sticks. The lessor is the landlord because they let the property. The lessee is the tenant because they live there.
Lessor lets. Lessees lives. If you just remember that, you will never get them backward again. Just look for the O and the E. The one with the O is the owner.
Love it. Next one. Single-family residential. You see this on the standard lease form. What does it actually mean? Because to me, it sounds like mom, dad, and 2 kids, the nuclear family.
And then N is the trap. The legal term, single-family residential, in the context of these forms, describes one housekeeping unit. It does not require a biological relationship.
So 2 unrelated roommates, they're single-family.
Yes. If 2 friends rent a condo together, share the kitchen, share the bills, and function as one household, that is a single-family residential arrangement in the eyes of the form language.
So it's not a rooming house.
And not a rooming house. A rooming house is where people have separate leases for separate rooms and locks on their doors and maybe don't even know each other.
Yeah.
But roommates sharing a whole unit, that's single family.
That is a huge distinction. Family doesn't mean blood relative. It means housekeeping unit.
Correct. It's a functional definition, not a biological one.
Okay, next one. Money again. First and last. We say this all the time. I need first and last.
We do. But we have to be precise about what last is. Last month is legally a rent deposit. It is money held by the landlord to be applied to the final month of the tenancy.
What is the trap here?
Calling it a damage deposit or security deposit. In Ontario residential leasing, damage deposits are generally not lawful. You cannot collect money just in case they break a window. You can collect a rent deposit.
So on a test.
So if the exam gives you an option for security deposit or damage deposit, it is almost certainly the wrong answer.
That's a big red flag. Stick to rent deposit.
Yes, it can only be used for rent, nothing else.
Final item in the lightning round. Witnessing.
Ah, the pen with dreams.
I love that quote. A witness who didn't watch is just a pen with dreams. Explain that.
It's funny, but it addresses a serious compliance issue. A witness must actually see the signing happen. You cannot walk into a room, see a document already signed, and say, oh, I'm sure they signed it, and put your name down.
So if you weren't there.
If the agent wasn't in the room, they cannot sign as a witness.
So simple. If you didn't see it, don't sign it.
Precisely. However, the source material does note a modern caveat, e-signatures. If you are using DocuSign or similar platforms, the digital audit trail often replaces the need for a physical witness. The software witnesses the digital stamp. So the witness requirement is fading in the digital age. But for wet ink signatures, the rule stands. You must watch.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground. We've built the map. We've gone from documents to math, to offer wording, to RTA rules, to condo quirks, and finally, the terminology traps.
It's a lot, but hopefully it feels more connected now. It's not just random facts. It's a system.
Before we sign off, I want to ask you for a final weak point fix. The source material gives some advice on how to spot the answer, even if you aren't 100% sure of the law. What are the red flags and green flags?
This is great test-taking strategy. Red flags are absolute words. Must, always, cannot, never.
The absolutes.
Real estate and law are rarely absolute. There is almost always an exception. So if you see a statement like, the tenant must always vacate, that is very likely wrong.
And the green flags. The words that suggest it might be the right answer.
Words that allow for nuance, can, may, typically, usually.
Yeah.
These options are often safer and more likely to be correct because they account for those exceptions we talked about.
That is such a solid tip. May is better than must.
And finally, do a final authority check. If you are stuck on a question, ask yourself, who holds the power?
Okay.
Who votes? The owner. Who complies? The tenant. Who ends the tenancy? The RTA process, not the sale. If you align your answer with those power dynamics, you will usually land on the right spot.
That is fantastic advice. Who holds the power? I think that applies to a lot more than just real estate exams.
Probably true.
All right, listeners, take a deep breath. You have the map. You know that NDAs are normal. You know EGI is GPI minus vacancy. You know the RTA is the invisible roommate.
And you know that lessor lets and lessee lives.
And that a witness who didn't watch is just a pen with dreams.
You are ready Just keep the logic straight. Documents leads to numbers, which leads to forms, which is governed by the RTA, with a side of condo rules.
Thank you for walking us through this maze. It definitely feels a little less like a trap-filled dungeon and more like a navigable path now.
My pleasure. Knowledge is only scary when it's disorganized. Once you organize it, it's just a tool.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. Go crush that exam or that negotiation, or just enjoy being the smartest person in the room next time someone brings up first and last. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.